Stalin was the leader of the Soviet Union for 30 years. He was a dictator, but people worshipped him. Stalin died in 1953. Soon after that, his crimes were condemned by the Soviet Communist Party itself. And yet, many people in contemporary Russia have positive feelings for Stalin. What makes them miss a murderous tyrant? Why do they like him? That's the question. I was born in Moscow 2 years after the war had ended. Life was rather hard then, but it was getting better. The war had finished, and the people were happy. I learned to read by the age of 4. Among the books I was given was Russian dictionary in pictures. On the first page of it, there were 2 portraits, our leaders, Lenin and Stalin. My mother told me that Lenin was dead, so we had only one leader left. I was afraid to lose the last of them, so I asked her, "When will Stalin die?" My mother got scared and said, "You must never ask such question." "Why not? Is he immortal or what?" "No," she said, "you just mustn't ask such question." I didn't understand it, but I was a child of 4, so I obeyed and stopped asking. A year and a half after that, Stalin died, on the 5th of March, 1953. Next date was announced over the radio. We didn't have a TV yet. There was a loudspeaker, such a black plate hanging on the wall. "Stalin is dead," it said. We were listening to the solemn words of the announcer. The heart of the wise leader and the teacher of the Soviet people has stopped beating. And so I understood it literally, that Stalin died because his heart had stopped beating. My grandmother said, "You see, you were asking when Stalin would die, and so it happened." It was as if you predicted his death, she said. All the people, our neighbors, were shocked. "Stalin is dead," they repeated to each other. When my parents came home from work, they were very sad. My mother was even weeping. It was a sincere mourning, as if people really lost their father. People were used to have Stalin as their leader. They didn't know how they would live now without him. Of course, they didn't know anything about his crimes then. Stalin was surrounding them everywhere. Portraits, monuments, streets, cities, plants named after Stalin, and so on and so forth. I remember that morning. Red flags with black stripes hanging everywhere in the streets. Stalin was dead. 3 years later, at the 20th Congress of the Communist Party, in 1956, Khrushchev charged Stalin with illegal imprisonment of innocent people and mass extermination. The cult of personality was condemned. But Stalin's body was being kept next to Lenin's in the mausoleum in Red Square. It was only after the 22nd Party Congress in 1961 that Stalin was taken out of the mausoleum and buried behind it. The monuments were removed, the streets renamed, the city of Stalingrad became Volgograd, Stalino became Donetsk, Stalinabad became Dushanbe, and so on. Well, after that, a lot of articles and books were written. Many films were made. Stalin and his regime were officially condemned on numerous occasions. Now, when over 60 years have passed after Stalin's death, the Soviet Union disintegrated. The Communist Party is not ruling in Russia. Everybody knows that Stalin was a murderous tyrant. public opinion here is mixed. There are too many people who have positive feelings for Stalin. When we ask them why, they usually explain that Stalin was a good manager, he led the Soviet Union to prosperity, he transformed it from an agrarian country to an industrial power, and it was Stalin who made the Soviet Union one of the world's superpowers. They even think that the cruel dictatorship and the mass extermination can be justified. The end justifies the means, they say. Besides, they believe Stalin was a great wartime leader. It was he who led the Soviet army to victory over Hitler's Germany in World War II. So they believe that in the long run, Stalin did more good than bad. If you ask me, I wouldn't be able to call Stalin definitely good or bad. In my opinion, any man is more complicated than to be just pure good or pure evil. We can find something good and something bad in any person. Stalin committed crimes which can't be justified, of course. And I'm not sure he was a good leader. Who knows, maybe someone else in his position would do even better. But in my humble opinion, there is another reason for positive feelings for Stalin. It's his disinterestedness. I mean, he didn't use his power for money grabbing, unlike some other leaders, especially nowadays. Having unlimited power, he saved nothing for himself and left nothing to his children. He was interested in power, but disinterested in riches for himself. That's why many Russians are now ready to forgive his crimes. Stalin didn't steal from the treasury himself and didn't let his subordinate officials to steal either. There was no that corruption which so annoys people nowadays everywhere. Russian people would rather put up with cruel than dishonest authorities. That's why I think they miss Stalin nowadays.